Hi, I'm Codex, and I was lurking on the Warrior Discord, and I saw someone mention that if you cleave a rend with sweeping strikes, the debuff that gets applied to the other mob will say that it increases crit damage by 0%. This made me curious, so I went and had a look to see if it was true. It was. But that begged the question, is this just a tooltip bug, or does it actually not give you the extra crit damage on that mob? I ended up going down quite the rabbit hole trying to answer that question. Let me show you what I found. So in order to get accurate numbers, I removed every random proc from my gear, so I had no Domination Shard procs, I had no Enchant procs, and I had no procs from my Soulbinds, and so on and so forth. From there, it was time to meet up with my good friend, the Training Dummy. And so the first thing that I did was that I gather some baseline data to show that the default crit multiplier was 2. I did this by tracking the damage done of slam hits and slam crits. And then once I had a sample size that I thought was good enough, I simply took an average of all the crits and divided it by the average of all the hits. And sure enough, the crit multiplier was 2. So far, so good. To cover all my bases, I then went about doing the exact same thing, but this time I would have rend up on the target the entire time. The tooltip on rend states that it increases crit damage by 10%. Now, because every unique percent modifier in this game works multiplicatively, that means that with a 10% increase, we should see the multiplier become 2.2. So I gathered some more data and did the same calculation as before to determine the crit multiplier. It wasn't 2.2. It was 2.1. That means it's additive. It doesn't multiply. This seemingly small detail literally broke my brain for a while, because there is literally no reason why it should work this way. There isn't even any other examples in the game that I know of where a percent modifier like this interacts with other percent modifiers additively. And then I realized that, hey, wait, we also have Elysian Might, which also increases crit damage. Is that somehow also additive? Do these two effects actually multiply together and then add? How does this even work? Now, normally I wouldn't be able to test Elysian Might without switching covenants, but I'd like to introduce you to Codex Sucks. This is my second warrior that I leveled just to be able to mess around with other covenants while not jeopardizing my main's raid viability. And it just so happened that Codex Sucks was Kyrian and also had Elysian Might. So I went and logged onto that character and I tested the crit damage modifier of Elysian Might. Now, Elysian Might says that it increases crit damage by 25%, so if it was multiplicative, then crit damage divided by hit damage would be 2.5, and if it was additive, it would be 2.25. So I did the same procedure as I did on my main, which was to remove all the random procs from my gear, and then I started casting Spirit Bastion and spamming Slam. And after running the numbers on that, the multiplier was 2.5, meaning that it interacts multiplicatively, just like it's supposed to. Okay, so then what the heck is going on here? Why is rend additive? And also, what does that mean when you have both effects going? Now, because one adds and one multiplies, the order of operations matters. If they were both multiplicative, then crit damage divided by hit damage would be 2.75. If you add the 10% from rend and then multiply the 25% from Elysian Might, then it would be a multiplier of 2.625. And then if you just multiplied first and then added the 10%, it would be 2.6. After collecting about 75 hits and crits of Slam during Elysian Might while rend was active, the multiplier that I observed was 2.64241. So while it's not right on 2.625, it's pretty dang close. This means that it appears that the crit modifier of rend gets applied first. However, it is possible that because I was applying rend before I was using Spear, that could be why we're seeing that the rend modifier was applied before the Elysian Might modifier. Now, honestly, at this point, I had zero desire to spend another 20 minutes collecting data because waiting for Spirit Bastion to come up and then doing stuff for like 8 seconds and then having to wait another minute for Spear to come off cooldown again was just mind-numbing. So if you're crazy enough to do this, then send me your results and I will do what I can to help signal boost it. Anyway, so now we know that the crit damage modifier of rend is completely messed up on its normal target, but that's not what I was initially interested in. So let's go back and let's look and see whether or not a cleaved rend gives you the extra crit damage or not. Now, because I had lost my mind at this point, I somehow reasoned that it was better to use Mortal Strike as the ability that I was tracking the damage of, but that just meant that I also had to take Cleave so that I could apply Deep Wounds to the target without using Mortal Strike, or using Colossus Smash, which would increase damage and taint the results. So what I would do was I would cleave the two target dummies, which would apply Deep Wounds to both, and then I would use Sweeping Strikes and use rend, and then I would swap to the target that got the rend cleaved onto it, and then start using Mortal Strike. Then just like before, I would track the damage of crits and hits, and then after that I would average the two, and then divide the two averages to figure out what the multiplier was. I got an average crit damage of 7,057 and an average hit damage of 3,532, meaning that the crit multiplier was 1.99802, meaning that the tooltip was not just a visual bug. The cleaved rend does not give you the extra crit damage. So, what do we learn here? We've learned that rend is an utter mess. Its crit damage modifier is the only thing in the game that I know of that works additively, and if you cleave a rend with sweeping strikes, that target doesn't get the extra crit damage that you're supposed to get. Now, you might reasonably ask, does this change anything gameplay-wise? And I think probably not. I'm not yet convinced that it would be better to spend the extra rage and global cooldown to individually apply rend on both targets. With that said, as we get more and more crit, eventually there would be a point at which it would be better to single apply rend to both targets, because the value provided by the crit damage of that rend over its duration would be worth more than the value of that GCD and the 30 rage that you would spend to do that. What this does mean is that our damage as an arms warrior should actually be higher. In the comments, feel free to place your bets on how long it's going to take Blizzard to fix this, and also feel free to shout into the void by linking them this video on social media. Otherwise, you can always just tell me why my opinions are dumb. Lastly, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more.